Caelid is one of the most horrific locations From Software has ever created. In this region of the Lands Between, the color green disappears from the environment, replaced by a sickly, rotten red. The grass and trees have all withered away, the animals have either vanished or been mutated into hideous and monstrous new forms, the soil has turned a nauseous pink, and the sky a deep scarlet red. Instead of the ordinary temperate flora we find in all the other regions of the Lands Between, Caelid's landscape has become dominated by what appear to be fungal organisms, massive colonies of mushrooms and blooming crimson buds. The whole place has the appearance of a bowl of fruit that has been left out for way too long, hollowed out by mold, moist and fetid and rotten. Caelid is an eerie and terrifying wasteland, one of the most dangerous locations in the game. Strangest of all, in the rotten womb of Caelid's poisonous swamps, what seems to be a brand new form of life has emerged. The game refers to them as pests. They are both insectoid and humanoid. Their bodies are twisted and strange. They grow their young within the coffins of our dead. They worship the rot and the pus which surrounds them. They thrive in this fetid environment. They are intelligent. They craft weapons, form little societies, and rigidly patrol their territory. They are absolutely hostile to human life. They attack anyone who approaches on sight. Despite their seeming intelligence, they never attempt diplomacy or negotiation. They are so alien and so different that communication between them and humans is probably impossible. Within this strange new life born of the rotten swamps, you might begin to see hints as to what is truly happening in Caelid. A lot of characters claim that the earth itself here is rotting away, dying, transforming into a lifeless wasteland full of horrors and monsters. But I don't think that's quite correct. Exploring Caelid is more like exploring the surface of another planet, some totally alien landscape, a natural biosphere formed under very different conditions than the ones which exist on the planet Earth. Everyone who sees it can recognize how horrifying and terrifying this place is, but what I don't think most people realize is that this is a prime example of cosmic horror. From Software are absolute masters of cosmic horror. One of their previous titles, Bloodborne, is perhaps the greatest work of cosmic horror ever created, not just in video games, but in all media. And many of their other games include cosmic horror elements as well. Demon Souls, Dark Souls, even Armored Core 6. But I think that Elden Ring, even more than Bloodborne, may truly be their cosmic horror masterpiece. But let's get back to Caelid so I can explain what I mean. Okay, so what is it about this setting that makes it more than just another From Software poisonous swamp? And they sure do love their poisonous swamps. There are like half a dozen of them in this game alone. But Caelid is different. It reminds me of one of H.P. Lovecraft's best stories, The Color Out of Space. Lovecraft was the father of cosmic horror. In his stories, his characters were not just dealing with the typical earthly monsters, but instead with ancient monstrosities born of the stars, creatures with such incredible power and such incomprehensible motivations that, to them, humans might as well have been little more than buzzing insects, whose lives are as irrelevant as they are meaningless. At the time, it was a very different kind of horror than anyone had done before. In The Color Out of Space, a man investigates the history of a forsaken farm property in rural New England, a forbidden place called the Blasted Heath, which all of the locals avoid and refuse to even speak about. He eventually learns that it used to just be a normal farm until about 50 years prior when a meteorite struck the property. The meteorite glows with a strange color or presence, a phenomenon so foreign to human senses that it cannot be accurately described with human language. It cannot even be properly perceived by human eyes. It is a truly alien energy. Over time, the meteorite begins to affect the plants and animals on the farm. The crops grow thick and lush, but are revealed to be inedible and poisonous. The animals exhibit strange growths and even stranger behavior. Worse than that, the effects are spreading, reaching further and further away from the impact site, changing more and more. The family who live on the farm, infected by the meteorite's influence, first become sick, then go insane, and finally their bodies begin to transform. They become something other than human. What's happening in this story is that the meteorite is, somehow, spreading a new alien ecosystem across the farm, changing plants, animals, and even humans to match the biology of its home planet. I suspect you can already see the parallel I'm trying to draw between the events of that story and what is happening in Caelid. I think that its ecosystem is being rewritten. A new alien biosphere is being forcefully and violently imprinted on top of the old, and because this new form of life is so utterly unlike our own, so contradictory to our biology, it is a poison to us. While we perceive this transformation as horrific, for the new life that thrives in this environment, it is a good thing. For them, it is simply their home. We are as alien and naturally poisonous to them as they are to us, which creates the endless conflict that rages across the Caelid region in the present, as survivors of the last Great War battle with fire against the life forms emerging from the rotten swamps, desperately trying to halt the spread of this new ecosystem. There is one big difference between what is happening in Caelid and what happens in The Color Out of Space. In that story, the source of the new ecosystem is a meteorite, fallen from the stars, born of a distant world. But there is no impact crater in Caelid, not exactly. Here, the source of the Scarlet Rot is not a meteorite, but a person, a single individual whose body was tainted or infected by an intelligent presence, which she did not understand and which she could never purge from her flesh, not even with the power of a god in her hands. Way back in Elden Ring's original story trailer, we were shown a battle, an epic confrontation between two demigods, the climax of one of the most violent and most calamitous campaigns of the last Great War, the Shattering, in which the earth itself was sundered. These two demigods are Malenia and Radon, two of the most powerful figures in the history of the Lands Between, who crossed blades in Caelid an age ago and fought a devastating battle here. At the very end of this fight, something bizarre happens, something none of us understood the first time we saw it. Unable to defeat her opponent, an enormous glowing orange flower erupts from Malenia's body, and when it blooms, it spreads a bright burning orange vapor in all directions, just like the alien glow of the meteorite in The Color Out of Space. What's happened here is that the equivalent of a nuclear bomb just went off, spreading deadly mutagenic radiation across this entire region, something that came not from outer space but from inside her own body. Malenia is the daughter of Marika and Radagon. Marika is the matriarchal god in the pantheon of the Lands Between. She is the equivalent of a Zeus or a Jupiter or an Odin. Radagon's identity is a little more confusing. He's something between an alter ego of and rival to Marika, but that doesn't really matter right now. What matters is that Malenia is the daughter of two or maybe 1.5 gods. She is an Empyrean, which is an individual with the nascent power of a god, the ability to become a true god under certain vaguely defined circumstances. Because of this, she should have perhaps been the most powerful of all the demigods, maybe even more powerful than her mother, a new god to rule over a grand, shining new age. But that was never to be, or at least not in the way that anyone expected. When she was born, it turned out that there was something very, very wrong with Malenia. Her body was rotting, or at least that's what it looked like. The effects of this rotting were dramatic and painful. When we finally meet Malenia in person, you can see that 2 of her limbs have rotted away entirely, along with her eyes and half of her face. It's as if her body is literally falling apart. piece by piece. Except, just like Caelid, her body is not really rotting at all. It is being rewritten by an alien biology. Midway through our own confrontation with her, when it appears that she might be defeated, this transformation finally completes, and it does not leave her rotten and sickly and weak. Instead, she emerges like a caterpillar from its cocoon, with a new angelic alien body, far more powerful than before. She has finally become a true god, but not a goddess of the Golden Order, and not a goddess of the earth or of humanity, but a goddess of the Scarlet Rot, of a truly new and strange age unlike anything anyone has seen before. By moving the source of the transformation from a meteorite into her actual body, the developers have made this transformation far more intimate and more personal, and thus more horrific, especially because Malenia spends most of her life fighting against this transformation. She only embraces it during her confrontations with Radon and our player character out of desperation, when she has no other choice but to tap into its corrupting power to defeat an otherwise unbeatable foe. She does not willingly embrace the Scarlet Rot or the power it offers or the fetid new age it would bring about. The pests, the intelligent life forms born of her poisonous blooms, they worship her as a god, but she does not accept their worship. She does not accept their loyalty. To their distress, she abandons them, what are essentially her unwanted children. The Scarlet Rot is changing her in ways that she does not want, and yet, no matter how much she despises it, she can also never fully stop it. She wants to dedicate her life to fighting for her twin brother, Mikola, and his new vision of the world, but the spreading rot inside her body prevents her from ever being anything more than a ticking time bomb. A foul influence on everything and everyone around her, continuously spreading that new alien biology, even if it is against her will. Despite all of his power, Mikola cannot stop the Scarlet Rot either, and actually abandons the Golden Order when it fails to heal his sister. And I suspect the real reason why no one can cure it is because the Scarlet Rot is not a disease. It is a presence, an alien intelligence which has caught her body in its pestilent grip and will never let go, an intelligence whose motivations we cannot comprehend, whose power is beyond anything we can imagine, whose origins and goals are a total mystery. So let's discuss the true nature of the Scarlet Rot, and to do that we need to look outside of Caelid, because this region is actually not the most rotten location in Elden Ring. It can be found deep underground, underneath the swampy, sinking land known as Liurnia. It is the Lake of Rot, a place where the Scarlet Rot's presence has festered for centuries, if not longer, transforming it into an even more alien and more poisonous environment than the one we see in Caelid. At the heart of this lake, the pests gather among ancient forgotten ruins to worship a relic of an outer god who has been sealed away. I know this because in the central chamber of those ruins, you can find a hidden treasure, the Scorpion's Stinger, whose description reads, "A ceremonial tool used by heretics, crafted from the relic of a sealed outer god." The description for the map of the Lake of Rot mentions this god too. It reads, "It is said that the divine essence of an outer god is sealed away in this land." We actually do have some idea of who was the one who sealed that outer god away, because the description of the blue dancer charm states, "The dancer in blue represents a fairy, who in legend bestowed a flowing sword upon a blind swordsman. Blade in hand, the swordsman sealed away an ancient god, a god that was Rot itself." Here, that outer god is finally given a name. It is simply Rot, the formless presence which is spreading that alien ecosystem to everything it touches. A story is being revealed here. In the distant past, in the time of legend, a god, a being of incredible power and mysterious origins, ravaged the landscape until it was defeated by a heroic blind swordsman. But it could not actually be killed. That god is not a living, organic being in the way we usually think of life. Instead, it is the divine, eternal essence of rot itself. So long as rot and decay exist anywhere, so will this god. It could only be sealed away, and so there it lay, dormant for countless generations, defeated but perpetual. However, that seal was not perfect. Eventually, some of the rot god's essence escaped and settled deep inside the body of a newborn demigod, inside the flesh of Malenia. No motivation is ever explained. Perhaps, in true Lovecraftian fashion, its motivations are so alien that they are simply inexplicable. We don't know if this was the result of an elaborate plan or random chance. We don't know if it even possesses a mind with which to reason or formulate plans. Perhaps the decay in Malenia's body is just a natural consequence of the greater decay of the Golden Order, of an age and a dynasty which has lived for far too long, which has stagnated in the exact same way as the Lake of Rot. Decay is, of course, inevitable, and so the essence of rot settled in the heart of that dynasty not on purpose, but by some natural process. Whatever the explanation, through her body, the rot god has been able to ravage the world a second time, and once again the blind swordsman reappeared to fight it, except this time, because it was nestled deep inside someone's body, he could not simply slay the god. Instead, according to the prosthesis wearer heirloom, he trained Malenia in a flowing sword art that would allow her to resist the rot's advance. In the biblical story of creation, God creates man in his own image. Well, in Elden Ring, the rot god is remaking the entire world in its own image. This is cosmic horror at its finest. Characters caught in the grips of a power beyond their own imagining, beyond their understanding, something alien and strange and horrific and seemingly unstoppable. However, the rot god is not the only god influencing events in the lands between. Elden Ring's story follows a very similar structure to that of Bloodborne, From Software's other cosmic horror masterpiece. At the start of that game, and for most of the game actually, it seems as if the story is set in a very typical, very sort of generic Victorian Gothic horror setting, where all of the characters wear fancy hats and monocles and fight duels with werewolves and vampires. But eventually there is a twist. The veil is lifted, and it is revealed that this seemingly ordinary setting has actually been caught in the clutches of several different nightmare cosmic gods, inhuman creatures who have ascended to a higher plane of existence and who are influencing the world in twisted and blasted ways. In a very similar way, at first, Elden Ring appears to be set in a pretty ordinary medieval fantasy setting. We've got soldiers in chainmail fighting with sword and shield and spell. We've got armored knights on horseback. We've got trolls and thieves and skeletons and dragons and mages. We've got forests and castles and ancient ruins and tombs and caverns to explore. Everything you would expect to find in a standard medieval fantasy setting. The fundamental rules of how the world works seems very ordinary at first too. This setting is being fought over by a pantheon of powerful gods and demigods who are all basically human in both appearance and motivation. Even though their power allows them to do incredible things, they generally behave and think and feel and react the way we would expect a normal person to. It is very similar to the Greek, Roman, and Norse pantheons we are all familiar with. I've already mentioned a few of those gods and demigods like Marika and Malenia and Mikola, but throughout the game there are mentions of another god, a god who seems to be even more powerful and more revered than Marika's pantheon, a god who never actually appears in the flesh in-game. Again and again, characters and item descriptions refer to something they call the Greater Will, a vaguely defined supreme being who seems to rule over all creation. But that's not unusual either. Medieval fantasy settings often have some equivalent to a basically Abrahamic-style creator god, a divine being who is all-powerful and all-knowing, who is worshipped in very Christian-looking chapels and cathedrals by very Christian-looking priests and bishops. However, when you reach the end of the game, something very, very strange happens that upends everything we thought we knew about the nature of the Greater Will. Okay, so in the final battle, you confront Radigan, the ultimate champion, who has seemingly seized both Marika's body and her godhood, the most powerful being in the lands between. When you defeat this guy, it should be over. There should be nothing left standing between you and the throne. But then something unexpected happens. This creature emerges from the depths of the Erd Tree. It transforms Radigan's dead corpse into a sword, demonstrating that no matter how powerful we thought Radigan and Marika were, and they were true gods, this creature is so much more powerful than them that their bodies are mere tools which it wields as weapons. This is a display of power on a whole other dimension than anything else we've seen in this game before. This is the Elden Beast, and I want to take a really close look at its visual design. This thing is not only meant to look inhuman, but also to appear unlike any form of life we would be familiar with anywhere on the planet Earth. It seems even more alien than those bizarre life forms we saw back in the rotten swamps of Caelid. The Elden Beast appears to be totally inorganic. If you look closely at its body, you'll see that it does not have flesh. Instead, it seems as if its body is composed of starlight. Except it's also an aquatic creature. Watch the way it swims through the water, the way it glides through this strange, surreal lake that has inexplicably formed in the depths of the Erd Tree. Water, or perhaps deep oceans, are this thing's natural habitat. Besides just wailing away with that sword it pulled out of Radigan's spine, it also attacks with magic that is both beautiful and incredibly powerful. I mean, just look at these attacks. They are gorgeous. It really looks like the power of a genuine god, full of radiance and splendor and shining light. It is some of the best work the animators over at From Software have ever done. The Elden Remembrance describes the Elden Beast as the vassal beast of the Greater Will and living incarnation of the concept of order. Okay, so there are two things to discuss here. First of all, the Elden Beast is a servant of the Greater Will. This reveals that the Greater Will is not just some generic pseudo-Christian creator god. Instead, it is a cosmic god, born of the stars or of another dimension or of who knows what. And if it's anything like this Elden Beast, its true form must be something genuinely bizarre. The Greater Will is confirmed to live somewhere beyond our planet. The description of the Elden Star's incantation reads, "It is said that long ago the Greater Will sent a golden star, bearing a beast into the lands between, which would later become the Elden Ring. The Elden Ring is a relic of truly amazing power, which is made up of runes, including the runes the player character uses to increase their own strength, and the Great Runes, which give the demigods their power. The runes of the Elden Ring also seem to determine the basic rules of reality in the lands between. For example, by excising the Rune of Death from the Elden Ring, Marika purged natural death from her kingdom. In this way, the Greater Will seized control of the lands between, forcefully and violently twisted this land into a so-called Golden Order. With Marika and her shining armies serving as its champions, it has conquered this kingdom, radically changed the way the laws of nature function here, changed the nature of the divine itself. And I think this process is, in some ways, very similar to the way the rock god transforms the environment in its own image. The Greater Will is doing basically the same thing, just with different methods. Let's look at that previous description again. The Elden Beast was the living incarnation of the concept of order. Okay, so in the same way that the Rot God was actually the divine essence of rot and decay itself, I think the Greater Will is the divine essence of order itself, somehow given life, given physical form. In the same way that the Rot God naturally spreads rot and decay to everything it touches, I think the Greater Will naturally spreads order and structure to everything it touches. This reveal that the Greater Will is actually some crazy cosmic god recontextualizes our entire understanding of this game's setting. The Lands Between are not just an ordinary medieval fantasy kingdom. This is actually a cosmic battleground where multiple starborn gods of unimaginable form and power are competing with each other through different proxies like Malenia and Marika, spreading their transformative influence, mutating and changing not only the environment and the life that lives here, but the laws of time and space too, the laws which govern reality. To these supreme beings, humans are, at best, mere pawns to be used in their cosmic schemes. Or at worst, humans are nothing to them. We are just insects to be swatted aside so that stellar movements beyond our comprehension can reach their zeniths. And it's not just the Greater Will and the Rot God, there's also the Blood Star, also known as the Formless Mother, also known as the Mother of Truth, discovered in the darkness by condemned criminals whose eyes had been gouged by thorns, and worshipped by Moog, the Lord of Blood, its champion. This god of the fringes appears to be the divine essence of flowing blood, and so she spreads cuts and wounds wherever her presence goes, so that more and more blood will flow. There's the Chaos Flame residing within the sealed tomb deep beneath the capital, resting within the flesh of the heretical Three Fingers. As the name suggests, I believe the Chaos Flame embodies the divine essence of chaos itself, the polar opposite of the Greater Will's order, marking these two as bitter enemies. There is the fell god of ruin, which slumbers within the body of the last giant, who appears to represent either the divine essence of ruin or perhaps of flame. There is the lost god of the ancient dragons, whose influence has long vanished from the earth, who fled this land for unknown reasons many ages ago, perhaps to escape the clutches of an even more terrible god, abandoning his children, the dragons, in the process. There are the mysterious and powerful moons discovered by Rennala and Ranni in their esoteric studies of glintstone sorceries, and because glintstone is formed by the remnants of stars, that's really just a study of the cosmos themselves. The pale light of these magical celestial bodies guides both Rennala and Ranni towards their destinies, but their true nature remains a mystery. There is the immortal serpent god which devoured Rykard, who may represent the essence of greed and who a prophecy claims will one day swallow the entire world in its endless quest for more power. There is Astel, the natural born of the void, a member of a species that falls to the earth in meteorites, and then follows a process of metamorphosis that ends with a stunning transformation into the creature you see on the screen now. Astel's design is actually very similar to the Elden Beasts in some ways. Notice how its body, too, is composed of starlight. Some of their attacks are even similar. There are nearly a dozen different godlike beings whose malign or cosmic or twisting influence has shaped the history of the Lands Between, and those are just the ones we know about. I probably missed a couple. The world of Elden Ring is a terrifying place to live, where your life is subject to the monstrous whims of any of a dozen different fell gods, each of which are alien and strange and dangerous, each of whom are so powerful that we are little more than insects in their presence. And yet, as strange as it is to say, that's really not as different from our own world as you might first think. The thing about cosmic horror that fascinates me is how true it feels. Of course, we are not living in a universe of cosmic gods of unimaginable power, or at least not as far as we know. But all of us are living in a world where our lives are influenced by tremendous forces which are outside our control and perhaps beyond our individual comprehension. How many of us can claim to truly understand quantum mechanics, or the fundamental forces of the universe, or even what the hell is going on with our global economy? These things determine so much about how we live our lives, and yet we have no control over any of it. At a fundamental level, we do not have control over our lives. That realization can make you feel anxious, a sense of dread, a feeling of powerlessness. Thematically, the purpose of the Nightmare Gods of cosmic horror is to give the audience a medium through which we can safely experience and explore those feelings. And that's part of why I think Elden Ring is a masterpiece of cosmic horror, because it does such a good job of making the player feel small and powerless, like we are trapped in a world that is confusing and incomprehensible. And yet there are also these rays of hope. These ways in which we can defy fate and take control of our destinies back from the fell gods who would underestimate our human potential, who would make the mistake of treating us as mere tools in their own foul schemes. In the end, small though we may be, we are the ones who will decide the destiny of the lands between. Of course, cosmic horror is about a lot more than just scary star monsters. There are a number of other important themes which imbue these types of stories with meaning, and all of those themes can be found in Elden Ring. Some of those themes are 1. Challenged primacy, 2. Forbidden or dangerous knowledge, 3. Deception or the sense that things are not as they seem, and 4. Madness or loss of control over the self. Okay, let's start with that first one, challenged primacy. Alright, so primacy is the idea that humans have primacy in the universe, or in the very least on our own planet. Basically, we humans are the biggest, baddest, and fattest asses around. We are the apex predator. We are the masters of the world. Cosmic horror stories often challenge our sense of primacy. They say no, humans are actually frail and weak and stupid. There are far scarier and smarter and more powerful forces out there, lurking in the shadows between stars. We have already discussed this theme in depth in this video. All of those cosmic gods, the rock god, the greater will, the blood star, all of them challenge humanity's primacy in this setting. But I've already explained all that, so let's move on to the second theme, forbidden or dangerous knowledge. Okay, there is so much forbidden and dangerous knowledge in Elden Ring that I could do an entire video on just this theme. In many stories, the pursuit of knowledge is portrayed as a moral good. Searching for and finding the truth is considered the right thing to do. But cosmic horror often turns this idea on its head. In cosmic horror stories, truth can be dangerous. Some knowledge is forbidden for good reason. When we search for the truth, we will inevitably find things we did not want to know, which upset our understanding of reality, of the nature of existence, and of our place in the world. You can find this idea all over the lands between. For example, the descriptions for the flame incantations taught by Corrin, a zealous servant of the greater will, read, "The flame of ruin is anathema to the Erd tree, but prophets sometimes glimpse it within the faith all the same. Sadly, when this occurs, their sole reward is banishment." Sometimes, prophets like Corrin see the Erd tree burning in their visions, and despite the truth of their prophecies, they are forsaken. The Erd tree is the foundation of civilization in the lands between, and if knowledge of its inevitable destruction spread, that would create chaos and anguish. Better to just hide the truth safely under the rug instead of confronting it. Another example can be found in the character Selen's questline. Selen is a mage who was banished from the Academy of Rea Lucaria, the center of academic sorcery in this world, because she refused to give up her study of something called the primeval current. The primeval current is dangerous. Selen sacrificed countless of her fellow mages in pursuit of its truth. Touching upon the current appears to have transformed the bodies of the primeval sorcerers, Azor and Lusat, into glintstone. At the end of her questline, Selen herself is transformed into this hideous sorcerer ball thing. perhaps as a result of her experiments. Whatever revelations the primeval current holds, they are probably better left alone. Praetor Rykard's pursuit of truth on Mount Gelmir led him to commit a hideous blasphemy. His excavations into the volcano's ancient history led him to rediscover lost magic, and then something much worse too. The immortal god-devouring serpent, who seduced Rykard with its disastrous promises of power. He ultimately fed the serpent his own flesh, gifting it incredible strength and endangering the entire world. The Shattering War, whose epic and terrible battles transformed the once bountiful lands between into a post-apocalyptic wasteland, may have also been the result of a misguided search for the truth. Marika, the matriarchal head of the Pantheon, was obsessed with knowledge. Her private bedchamber is filled from floor to ceiling with ancient tombs and scrolls. In one of her echoes, she states, "I declare mine intent to search the depths of the Golden Order. Through understanding of the proper way, our faith, our grace is increased. Those blissful early days of blind belief are long past." Whatever knowledge Marika discovered in her search for the truth of the Golden Order led her to shatter the Elden Ring, to destroy the fundamental law of the world, which led directly to the war between the demigods. Perhaps everyone would have been better off if Marika had never started her search for the truth in the first place. Again and again and again, knowledge in Elden Ring is revealed to be dangerous. The third theme I wanted to discuss is deception, the sense that things are not as they seem. Characters in Elden Ring are constantly being deceptive, hiding their true identities from the player. Ranni pretends to be Rena, the recusants of the Volcano Manor pretend to be a band of noble champions, when in reality it's just an assembly line designed to feed new sacrifices to the serpent. Morgott pretends to be Margit and also hides behind the title of the Veiled Monarch. Mohg hides behind the title of the Lord of Blood. And in the most confusing identity deception of all, Marika is revealed to be Radagon, her own husband and father to her children, and a character whose motivations are the exact opposite of her own. I've seen a lot of players question what the heck is going on with all the hidden identities in this game. Why do so many characters pretend to be someone they are not? Well, I think, in line with the cosmic horror genre, the developers are trying to create a setting where the truth can never be assumed, where nothing is ever as it seems, a place of distortions and deceptions and blurred lines. These themes are meaningful because they reflect our own lives. We ourselves are living in a world full of deception. People are lying to you all the time. Politicians, advertising agencies, social media influencers, internet trolls, fake news, our own friends and family. We exist in a reality where we can almost never be totally certain what is actually true, and Elden Ring is trying to provide us with an exaggerated version of the same experience. The fourth and final theme I want to touch on is madness. In cosmic horror stories, knowledge is not only dangerous, it also causes characters to go insane. In these stories, the human mind is portrayed to be fragile, and when it tries to comprehend shocking truths, it can outright collapse. There is a lot of madness in Elden Ring, particularly surrounding the Chaos Flame. Those who have been seduced by the Chaos Flame go insane. Their minds cannot handle the truth that the Three Fingers offer. Mohg, the Lord of Blood, is also often described as mad by characters and item descriptions. It is suggested that his obsession with the Formless Mother, his attempts to establish a new dynasty based on flowing blood and wounds, are not the result of a sane mind. And multiple characters also describe the Two Fingers, servants of the greater will who guide the player character, as senile or insane, which might be true, since, in the end, their plan to have a Tarnish to become Elden Lord fails, at least as it was originally conceived. The Tarnish is rejected by the Erd Tree. The whole journey they sent us on would have been a pointless waste of time if we had not burned the tree down, something the Two Fingers never would have approved. Radon the Starscourge has completely lost his mind. His ability to reason has been consumed by the scarlet rot that infects his body, and Rykard seems to have lost his senses too, his independent will and intelligence devoured by the immortal serpent. At its core, in fiction, insanity is really the ultimate loss of control. It is a common trope for heroes in stories to repeat some version of the phrase, "You may have enslaved my body, but my heart and my mind will always be free," which speaks to this idea that no one can control our ideas. Whatever happens to our physical bodies, our thoughts will remain our own. But what if you go insane? Losing control over your own mind means losing control over everything, over your basic perception of reality. In cosmic horror, nothing is safe from the influence of these nightmare cosmic gods, not even your most private and intimate thoughts and feelings. The upcoming DLC, The Shadow of the Erd Tree, is going to focus on Miquella, son of Marika and brother of Malenia. It has been suggested that Miquella has the power to control the hearts and minds of those around him, and if that turns out to be true, it would reveal that he is the most horrific god in this story, even more terrifying than the Rot or the Greater Will, because he is the only god with the power to turn you against yourself. The themes of cosmic horror can be found in absolutely every storyline and character arc of Elden Ring, from the hideous alien decay of the Scarlet Rot, to the glorious shining golden order of the Greater Will, to the bookish halls of the Academy of Rhea Lucaria, to the frozen mountaintop of the Giants, where the last living giant holds a slumbering fell god within his own flesh. What makes all of these themes meaningful is how they relate to our own lives, our own feelings of anxiety and powerlessness, our weakness and ignorance, the sense that we do not have control over our own lives, that our futures are in the clutches of persons and forces which do not care about us or have our best interests at heart. One of my goals with this channel is to discuss the stories of video games with the same seriousness with which we discuss the stories of great novels in cinema. Video game narratives are getting more mature, more complex, and more meaningful all the time. We are currently witnessing the emergence of a new medium for storytelling, and Elden Ring is a part of that, and it deserves serious study. It's not just that eldritch nightmare gods make for cool boss fights, it's that these stories can tell us things about our lives in surprising ways, discuss what is really important and why, provide a space to explore uncomfortable feelings and ideas that are difficult to discuss otherwise. And my hope is, with this video, I have been able to show you that at least a little bit. I absolutely adore the worlds that From Software crafts and the stories they tell. I plan to make a whole series of video essays on Elden Ring, delving deep into the characters and themes of this game from a writer's perspective, and diving into whatever new characters the DLC introduces as well. So if you enjoyed this video, I hope you will return for more.